companies, hospitals, et cetera, are behind on updating and patching their systems, and that's a way that hackers get in. And another one that's often overlooked is phishing simulation and cybersecurity training.
Hello world, this is BetterTech, a podcast where we chat with some of the most successful leaders about the latest industry developments. So join us as we explore the world reliant on tech. This episode is brought to you by Techcell, a leading software development company. Check them out at techcell.com. We're joined today by Rich Tehrani, CEO TMC, to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on cybersecurity and how companies can meet this challenge going forward. So welcome, Rich. Let's start this off with your introduction for our audience.
Hi, my name is Rich Tehrani. I am the CEO of TMC. TMC is a media and conference organization. We educate business buyers on technology solutions they need to better run their companies. And we also put on conferences that do the same thing.
So in light of the ongoing situation, how do you think this pandemic has impacted companies' day-to-day operations?
Well, a lot of companies have been forced to rapidly embrace digital transformation by having workers work from their homes, those companies that are able to do so. So what's happened is a 10-year shift in digital transformation is happening almost instantaneously, and most companies haven't been prepared and are not prepared for the current situation they are in with their workers at home.
Yeah. And can you also tell us a little bit about how you're seeing cyber criminals capitalizing on the coronavirus in their attacks?
Sure. There are numerous ways that this is taking place. Number one, they are sending millions more messages regarding coronavirus type information. So trying to lure people to click on emails that are related to the pandemic. Second, the challenge in general is that workers are on home computers that typically were not set up to deal with corporate information passing through them. So we're in a situation where they may not have antivirus, they may not be backed up. There may be users on the same computer that have no training in cybersecurity and may be clicking randomly on links. There could be keyloggers installed on these computers, which would allow any hackers to get access to work credentials and get into work networks. It's unclear if business files are going to be stored on these home computers. Quite often they probably will be, and if ransomware takes place, there will be a challenge in terms of getting those files back if the remote computer is encrypted and the information's encrypted and you can't get information off of it. And then finally, there has been a massive uptick in scanning and probing of the internet since the outbreak of this epidemic, trying to see, or pandemic, to see if they can, the hackers are trying to see if they can find holes in computer systems, knowing that the world is in a state of, I guess, just in a state of flux, really. So a lot more probing by the hackers trying to look for holes.
Right. And taking a more macro approach, are you seeing kind of change in adjustment with the people you work with? How concerned are people with security these days?
For companies that have gotten to be a certain size, maybe more than 100 or 150 people, or companies that are in industries that are regulated, they're more concerned about cybersecurity. The small to medium business still is not as concerned as they should be. And even after they've been breached or they've had an attack, quite often the small businesses, they look at it as a one-time event and think it won't happen again. So there's not enough concern right now about cybersecurity. And I'd say even though the threat is greater now than perhaps it's ever been, companies are not as focused on it now because a lot of them have seen their income cut way down and they're waiting for government stimulus checks or something like that in terms of trying to figure out when things will get back to normal. They're not focusing on cybersecurity, especially since the ones that have workers at home have more vulnerabilities than they've ever had, and hackers are taking advantage of that. So the answer is they're not taking it seriously enough, and there have been more attacks and there are more breaches, and now companies are facing the threat of not only having limited income or no income, but on top of that, getting breached and having the massive expense of a breach and trying to resolve what happened in the breach, potentially new legal issues, liability issues of being fined by compliance organizations, and loss of customers if a customer finds out their information was leaked by the company. So it's a very tough time for companies right now.
Yeah, but isn't that pretty concerning in itself? I mean, you think that with all these cyber attacks that are going on, ransomware and malspams, companies ought to be more concerned about these issues.
They should be, but a lot of business owners are not very technically savvy, and even the ones that are, they just hope it doesn't happen to them. And so they either do that, they'll put their head in the sand, which is kind of similar. They hope, maybe they hire someone and hope that person knows what they're doing. Yeah, they should. This is a this is a prime way for hackers to get into companies. It's very easy for them to make money by installing ransomware on a company's computers and forcing a ransom to be paid. And it's like you said, it's not being taken seriously. A lot of companies hope it won't happen to them.
Okay. So let's talk about the remote working model that companies globally have adopted. We're in a situation where a lot of companies have the entire workforce working remotely, maybe for the first time ever, and changes have to be made to the systems and infrastructures. So what is it that companies should do and what they should be doing? Because they have to get stuff done by like yesterday, but in a secure way.
Well, the companies need to make sure that their firewalls are set up correctly, that they have VPNs set up. Ideally, they want to make sure that the home computers are also secure, which means having the proper antivirus tools on the computers, anti-malware. Ideally, they want to be backing up those computers as well. They probably want to ensure that the backups are being done on cloud as well, so information they have stored in the cloud gets backed up in case there's an issue with the cloud information where it gets either encrypted or it gets hacked or something happens to it deleted. Basically, you've got to look at your business as kind of, it might have been somewhat easy to manage before this pandemic, but now you've got to look at all these new computers as ways to get into the corporate network, and you've got to think about every home computer as a potential access point for a hacker to get into the system and for a hacker to encrypt. And you have to take the steps to protect every one of those devices, whether they're mobile phones, tablets, laptops, PCs, etc.
Yeah. And so can you also elaborate a little bit more about the key challenges that are associated with people working from unusual places with unusual devices? Like you said, there's a lot of protection going around, like home computers, and companies have to look into that. So what are like the key challenges companies are facing right now?
Well, the challenge is, how do you get access to all these home computers? You a lot of times they don't have the staff, the technical staff, to manage all these home computers. And the perhaps the more realistic challenge, I touched on this earlier, but companies, not only are they facing a decline in revenue, but they don't know how long the situation's going to last. So they don't know how long they're not going to be bringing in revenue or enough revenue, and they don't know how long the home computers are going to be used. Many of them are just taking the risk that nothing will happen and we'll be back to work soon. We don't know, no one really knows when it's going to be safe to go back to work or when workers are going to feel comfortable. That's an unknown right now, and companies are not focusing on the home computers the way they should to be doing the things I outlined a few moments ago in terms of ensuring they have antivirus on them, ensuring that if they're working with a managed service provider, that the managed service provider is monitoring all the home computers, is checking them for viruses, is getting them backed up. So those are the kinds of things that have to get done whenever a computer is being used for work. But again, facing loss of revenue, facing uncertainty as to how long this is going to last, companies are not rushing to focus on spending in cybersecurity, whether it's focusing time and attention or money. So again, there is a hole, and hackers know it, and they're trying to take advantage of this hole.
Is there an upside to this? Are there any security benefits from everybody working remotely?
I'm going to say no. I don't think it's a benefit because as I mentioned earlier, the more disparate these devices are, the more BYO device, bring your own device, companies have to deal with, the more challenging it is for them. If this was more of a controlled work from home situation where we had a year and a half for companies to prepare and spend and make sure they had the proper VPNs and firewalls and all the computers in their homes were set up with maybe two-factor authentication and things like that, so that you could log in with multiple factors, so it's not as easy as just stealing a password and getting in, then I'd say maybe it would be equal to working from the office. But the way things are now, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for companies. They're not focusing on it, and the hackers know it, and so it's a bad time right now for cybersecurity.
Right. And we already touched upon some of the security challenges that may accompany the shift to a remote workforce. But do you have any thoughts on what's ahead and how could companies be better prepared?
Well, we don't know if there's going to be more lockdowns in the future. I think what this has taught us is that companies need to focus on digital transformation. Sometimes we call it the future of work, and they need to redesign their organization to allow workers to work from anywhere. And of course, not every company can do this. Not every organization can do this. We're learning that, right? If you've got physical people that are packing things or moving things or boxing things, this doesn't work. But for those information workers that you have in your organization, the future is basically more flexibility and learning to use the latest technology to allow the workforce to be productive regardless of where they are. And not only productive, but secure, productive wherever they are.
Right. And we're also seeing some healthcare organizations being hit by cyber attacks right in the midst of this pandemic. There was news about I don't know if you came across it, but there was news about a Czech Republic hospital that serves as a COVID-19 testing lab being hit by a cyber attack. So any advice for these type of organizations, how to shore up their defenses in short order to prevent or mitigate cyber attacks?
Yes. And so the answer there is I'm aware that that's happening. It's happening around the world. There are numerous testing facilities that have gotten hit. One source or one article I saw said Iran was behind some of the attacks. Who knows who's behind the other attacks. But it's cybersecurity is fairly consistent in that companies need to make sure that they not only have the technology and systems in place to ensure that they are secure, so the proper antivirus, the proper firewall configurations, computers and devices need to have the latest release. A lot of times companies, hospitals, et cetera, are behind on updating and patching their systems, and that's a way that hackers get in. And another one that's often overlooked is phishing simulation and cybersecurity training. And the idea there is ensuring that workers are educated properly so that they don't click on something inadvertently, and once they do that, they could let a hacker into the network, or install ransomware that locks up all the computers and makes them unusable. So those are the things you need, not just technology, but you need a culture of cybersecurity where everyone in the organization understands that they are one click away from taking down the company, the organization, the hospital, the medical clinic, whatever it is.
Yeah, so you've mentioned all these things, and it sounds to me that it's not something that can be done overnight. It's possibly, we're talking months down the road. How far do you think that's actually mandated for the new normal? The upgrading all the infrastructure and, like you've mentioned, a whole complete culture of cybersecurity training.
If I'm a company and I have a business which I believe is going to be around past pandemic, and I want to make sure that I protect it, and I don't believe that I am protected today, the first thing I would do is, if I don't have the right IT team in my company or cybersecurity team, I would go out and hire a managed service provider that is top rated, that has good references, and I would bring them into my organization, and I would say, I need you to go through from the beginning of my technology in the office all the way out to my users. I need you to scan it and do auditing and documentation of what's happening on my network with my technology, to how to solve any challenges that I have, and then I would evaluate and make those investment decisions. Something like that could take a matter of months if you act on it quickly. Probably not less than a month and a half, if you urgently do it. And to be honest, now is the time to do it, because hackers are probing, like I keep saying, more and more. And if you don't have, like, for example, my media organization, we have someone whose part of his job is to go through and look at who is probing our company and trying to attack our company on a daily basis, and blocking those people or those IP addresses from getting to us.
Right.
That is something you need to do, or you need to have technology that does it for you in an automated fashion. You're probably not thinking about that, again, because you're thinking about your day-to-day. But if you think your company's going to be around after the pandemic's over, then now is the time to do these things. And the MSPs know it. They're working harder than ever as well, because they a lot of times are the organization that are helping a company transition from work in the office to work from home.
Yeah, and I believe that in your experience so far, you might have come across organizations facing similar challenges. Can you walk us through a risk scenario?
Sure. So the cost, if a company gets breached and they are subject to compliance, and really more and more companies are subject to compliance, they don't even know it, from PCI, if they take credit cards, to HIPAA, if they're medical. If you're publicly traded, you have numerous organizations that you need to be aware of, such as FINRA and others. You have to worry about getting fined. So things like, you have a breach and the organization finds out about it, the compliance organization, they fine you. So that's one thing to be concerned about. But from there, if you get hacked and the information gets out, you have to report it. Your customers find out that their information was leaked because of your systems getting breached. Now they potentially won't work with you anymore. You no longer are trusted by them, and they go to a competitor. Right. Then there is the lawsuits. Customers could sue you. There's class action lawsuits. Then there is the recovery and the forensics of trying to figure out who got in, what did they get, how much did they get, and if there are other implications as to what you need to do. For example, if a hacker gets in and steals credit card information, you may now be forced to pay for credit monitoring for all of your customers, or all the people that were in your database. And so there's a cost associated with that. And so costs for hacks for small businesses run from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, and they can take years to resolve. legal issues as far as you can, as long as the list of things you can conceive of, those are the legal issues you face. And companies who might have insurance, cybersecurity insurance, may think that they're covered. The cybersecurity insurance companies are getting really tougher and tougher to get money from, because they're writing their policies in ways that they don't want to have to pay out excess amount of money. So sometimes you'll get hit and you think you have security or you have insurance, but you don't, or you're not covered. And even if you are covered, then your concern is going to be, how much are my cybersecurity rates going to increase? So you really don't want to be breached for a long, long list of reasons. And those are just some. There are probably some I left out. You may have to now reconstruct your network. You may have to spend a lot of money on technology too that you weren't spending beforehand. Had you spent it earlier, you would be less likely to have been breached in the beginning. So that's just some of the costs that you have to worry about.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure every company would want to avoid that. So coming back to the ongoing situation in the road ahead, so business continuity-wise, is this going to have a huge impact, particularly from an InfoSec point of view? Or do you think we'll get in front of it and we'll keep making the right calls so that in the end, nothing really super bad happens?
Well, I think, again, we're in a very difficult time right now for companies, because many of them are facing revenue uncertainty, and they may not have the money saved up or the line of credit needed to make investments in cybersecurity. So this is a major problem, and it's not going away anytime soon. It's going to take months, years. We'll see record numbers of breaches. We'll see record numbers of companies closing their doors, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the pandemic and getting breached. And at a certain point, they're going to look at the expenses that they have, and they're going to realize that between the uncertainty of the pandemic and I say pandemic, post-pandemic is going to be a challenge too, because we don't know if you're a restaurant and you're used to having 150 people on a typical night in your restaurant. Even if the pandemic's over tomorrow, we don't know how long it's going to be until you'll have 150 people in your restaurant again. It's unknown. These are so many unknowns. And then on top of that, you could have hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars of costs associated with a breach, knowing your cybersecurity insurance rates are going to go up. Companies are just going to close because it doesn't make sense to deal with all these problems. As it is, many small businesses were closed down because of cybersecurity breaches during the good times. And this is now a bad time, so it's going to be even tougher for them to survive.
Right. So, and I think also another key aspect of mitigating these cyber attacks and dealing with them in a timely manner is communication, especially with the remote working model. I believe the communication is absolutely crucial. So any advice that you'd give to a team lead, and any tips for data handling?
Sure. I would be focusing on cybersecurity training while people are at home. Phishing simulation is more crucial now than ever. Where companies are sending out false phishing messages, basically trying to see who's clicking and who isn't clicking. And if they click, they get a message saying, you were just tricked. Please be more careful when you click. I would make sure that you have hygiene on the shared computers. If you can try to get computers in the household that are not shared by others, that would be ideal. It's not always possible. Whatever you can do to get antivirus and anti-malware installed on those computers, as much training, like I said, as you can do for employees so they know what not to do from home. I mean, those are some of the places I would start, because the weakest link in cybersecurity quite often is described as the individual, and now the individual is on a computer that's not as protected, not as secure, and is shared by others that are potentially a threat, or at least they're not as secure as someone who's corporate cybersecurity aware.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are some great tips. So Rick, thank you so much for taking the time out for this today.
You're welcome. This was great. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode by BetterTech. If you enjoyed this podcast, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to share it across your favorite social networking platform. We look forward to bringing you the latest industry news in our next episode. In the meantime, take a look at our other episodes and hit subscribe with the links in the description box below so that you don't miss out on the latest in tech.